This is pretty funny stuff, I think. So the MAGA crashing out over the Epstein files non-release continues. Here is almost a full week ago today, Attorney General Pam Bondi confirms that the Epstein files will be redacted for national security reasons. So keep in mind, okay, this is after the first Epstein files debacle of a release. That was at the very end of February. So a few days later, obviously, after blaming the Southern District of New York and the FBI for not having their shit together, Pam Bondi comes on Sean Hannity's show, and she says, yeah, we're going to have more, but obviously we're going to have to redact some of this for national security reasons.
Maybe some people don't understand the need to redact. In the case of a victim, that should be pretty obvious to people. What are the other things that maybe you would have to redact?
Well,
national security?
No, of course, national security, some grand jury information, which is always going to be confidential. But we'll see. Let's look through them as fast as we can, get it out to the American people, because the American people have a right to know, not only on that, but on Kennedy, on Martin Luther King, on all of these cases that the Biden administration has just sat on for all these years. So yeah, it's really. It's not sad. It's infuriating that these people thought that they could sit on this information, but they can't. It's a new day, and we believe in transparency, and it's going to come out. And when we redact things, Sean, what we're going to do is not just pull pages out like they used to do. If something's redacted, you will know the line, and you will know why it's redacted.
Well, really, that wasn't the case with phase one.
That's not what they did.
No. Well, in phase one, they just gave you a bunch of black pages.
Marker. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Phase one, it was just a bunch of black pages. So, that's not what they did for phase one. Now you're saying the next dump is going to have what? Annotated redactions? That's not quite what people are looking for either. And once again, folks,
implicates the president.
Yeah, exactly.
Implicates very powerful Republican donor.
Yeah. Yeah. So once again, I'll remind you that was March 4th. So today is March 9th. So that was almost a full week ago already. And this was 11:31 a.m. So this was probably posted from the prior evening show. So this would have been almost a full week ago right now. So, MAGA, of course, restless about this. We did a full segment on this that we dropped right when this all went down the first time. About how MAGA's kind of losing it over this. The Epstein files have kind of been their white whale. They've been really looking forward to revelation on this case for quite some time. But here's Megyn Kelly. This is one of my favorite pieces of video that I've seen in a while. Megyn Kelly discusses what she has heard about Jeffrey Epstein. Thoughts, says Vince Langman. You could always tell they're eating shit when they take a poll of their followers. Thoughts?
Yeah,
question
thoughts.
mark? They're trying to see which way the wind is blowing.
We're not like the Democrats. We're open to having a conversation.
Thoughts? What they're really doing is they're seeing whether their followers buy this or not, right? Yeah. They're seeing what their followers think so that they don't get on the wrong side of them. It's a very common audience capture tactic, is you put something out there that's kind of weird and you say, hey, what do you guys think about this? I certainly am not going to express an opinion until I know what 80% of my followers think. Now, the reason this is controversial is because the thrust of what Megyn Kelly says here is, hey, I've talked to somebody who knows a lot about this Epstein case, and really turns out it's really not that big a deal. So there's a certain word here that'll get the clip demonetized, so I kind of blacked that out. That is the fan of the playground word. We all know what that is. You will see it's pretty obviously censored out of this, but this is pretty amazing. This is some pretty amazing cope. Epstein schmepstein, says Megyn Kelly.
I had a couple of conversations with somebody very close to the Epstein case, very close to it, who shall go nameless for this conversation. And this person swore to me,
Melania Trump.
No, that there's
he could talk too. He knows shit too.
That
Jim Acosta.
He wasn't this quote pedophile.
Right.
That he was into 16, 17-year-old girls.
Yeah.
But that wasn't exactly his thing. And that pretty much every famous celebrity was friends with him and went on his jet.
Yeah.
But that at most, all they were getting was like the so-called massages from these 16, 17-year-olds, as opposed to like a pedophile ring.
Yeah.
Now, I don't...
16, 17 is pedophile for me.
Well, it depends on the state. It could be illegal.
But
or
in some places, it's probably legal. Like even in Canada or even like the UK or something. In France, I don't even know if they have an age.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
No,
I think they're still defending him over there.
Yeah, the only thing they age is cheese.
Yeah, look, in some states, it's totally legal. And, look, he wasn't exactly a pedo. He, like the 16, 17. And, yeah, the people on the plane, they were really just getting massages. I mean, really, this is all much ado about nothing. I mean, there really doesn't seem to be much of a there after all.
Hey, look, Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin.
Yeah,
they were very happy together until he murdered her.
Yeah, right, exactly. It was really more of a massage ring is what it was. Epstein was a certified massage therapist. He was mentoring young girls on massage. And, on the island, I hear they mostly did like snorkeling and water volleyball. It was mostly, a lot of, beach sports kind of thing over there. Nothing really much. That's good to know.
In Thailand, that's a family business. They call it milking the fat Westerner.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Milking the fat Westerner. So apparently, this Epstein story really isn't much of a story, according to Megyn Kelly. So now that we're not getting the files, now that we're not getting the files, it's all a big nothing burger. Is that more or less what she says? Let's play this one more time. See if I'm interpreting that unfairly.
A couple of conversations with
I know somebody
very
who said
close
it was really
to the Epstein
not
case,
much,
like
not
very
much of
close
anything.
to it, who shall go nameless for this conversation. And this person swore to me,
Acosta?
no, that there's
He could talk too. He knows shit too.
that he wasn't this quote pedophile.
Right.
That he was into like 16, 17-year-old girls.
Yeah.
But that wasn't exactly his thing. And that pretty much every famous celebrity was friends with him and went on his jet.
Yeah.
But that at most, all they were getting was like the so-called massages from these 16, 17-year-olds, as opposed to like a pedophile ring.
I mean, it seems so minor. I don't know why he would hang himself over this. I mean, why? I mean, it seems to just be pretty minor. It seems to be all pretty benign, right?
Well,
this is like the Russiagate, for MAGA. There's really nothing there. It doesn't seem that Jeffrey Epstein is that big a story. Now that we're not getting the files, that is some cope. That is certainly a take. But we should let you know, folks, weeks after the Epstein file fallout, a new deadline looms over the release of the RFK and MLK files. So the most transparent presidency in history apparently just missed another deadline to drop more tea, to spill more tea, I should say, pardon the mixed metaphor, on the Martin Luther King and RFK files. The lack of new material prompted an outcry and criticism of the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files. Sunday, that's today, marks the second deadline in an effort to release the RFK and MLK assassination files, just weeks after the fallout from the highly anticipated release of the Epstein files by the Department of Justice. In light of President Donald Trump's executive order in January to declassify files on the assassinations of former President John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert F. Kennedy, and civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr., the Director of National Intelligence and other officials were expected to submit their proposed release plans for the RFK and MLK files on March 9th. That would be today. Now, we're broadcasting live here pretty late in the day. Tell us in the chat, any news on this? I don't think so. DNI and the Attorney General were previously given a February 7th deadline to submit their release plans for the JFK files. The RFK and MLK release plan deadline comes just weeks after the Justice Department revealed a batch of Jeffrey Epstein files in late February. Many of the documents publicized then had already been released during the federal criminal trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's former lover and convicted accomplice. The lack of new material prompted an outcry and criticism of the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files and questions about what the RFK and MLK documents could hold upon their release. Gerald Posner, author of Case Closed, told Fox News Digital at the time that he expects there will be news in there, but it's not going to be something that turns upside down our understanding of what really happened with those cases. Big surprise.
Which is why they're willing to release them.
Right, yeah, some of them. Some of them.
Some of them.
Trump's declassification executive order came after he promised to declassify the documents upon entering his second term while on the campaign trail, saying at the time, "When I return to the White House, I will declassify and unseal all JFK assassination-related documents. It's been 60 years. Time for the American people to know the truth." The FBI said in a February statement that it had conducted a new records search in light of Trump's executive order, saying at the time the search resulted in approximately 2,400 newly inventoried and digitized records that were previously unrecognized as related to the JFK assassination case file. The FBI has made the appropriate notifications of the newly discovered documents and is working to transfer them to the National Archives and Records Administration for inclusion in the ongoing declassification process, the agency continued. Fox News Digital reached out to DNI and the FBI for additional comment. You know, I've heard the point made several times, and it's a good point, that for all the people who gave Julian Assange shit for not parsing through the leaks and choosing what to release and what not to release, this really proves the value of that. Because at this point, if you get a partial Epstein list, how are you supposed to really trust that? I mean, you don't know the story unless they are willing to just reveal everything. And the same thing goes with RFK, with MLK. This is now the second deadline that they've missed. And this is something that a lot of people really cared about during the campaign. This was the whole, I mean, this was the major rationale for Kash Patel. I mean, he's been promising this for a very long time. He's been talking about the need to declassify a lot of this information, and right out of the gate to have just a disastrous phase one dump where you make an absolute clown out of all these influencers, Jack Posobiec, Chaya Raichik, Liz Wheeler. They go out, they take pictures with the binders as if they have something. I guess they didn't check to make sure they had something before posing for those photos because they ended up having nothing. And now, obviously, Pam Bondi comes out and says that the Epstein files are going to be redacted for national security. Well, that ought to tell you a lot right there. I mean, why should there be any risk to national security to know who was a client of this predator? Like, what does that have to do with anything unless there are very high up important decision makers who may be implicated in that? I mean, that is somewhat of an admission of guilt right there, the fact that there are national security implications to this list. I mean, if it was just some movie stars, then that wouldn't be a national security threat, would it? And then the RFK and the MLK stuff, you know, I mean, these are things that I think a lot of people care a lot about, especially, you know, amongst the real sort of diehard MAGA base. And there doesn't seem to be much progress, if at all, on them.
Yeah, Whitney actually, in response to Ian Carroll's Joe Rogan appearance, where he started characterizing her work, she corrected him and many others, saying she's not claiming that Epstein worked for Mossad. She's saying he worked for Defense Intelligence, which is a different department, and people tend to lump it all in under one thing. But there are other intelligence services coming out of Israel. But she is, if I understood her, I don't want to be the next person to mischaracterize her reporting, but I'm pretty sure she was saying that's who he was actually working for. But yeah, clearly they don't want to reveal. Obviously, this guy didn't get all these passes without being of service to the government in some way. Even if you do have billions of dollars, you're this fan of the playground. Like, you don't just get a slap on the wrist if you're not doing a lot of work for the three-letter agencies or foreign intelligence that are very connected to those. They don't want to reveal that. And hey, they love doing the whole the libs are perverts, and they are, many of them. I'm not saying no. Plenty of pervy people on the other side of the aisle too that I am sure they don't want to put out there, that they don't want to hang out to dry. A lot of those people probably are still their donors, that whose names they don't want to reveal. I'm sure it's not just Bill Clinton who was on that island.
No, obviously, and I think that's obviously a huge motivating factor for that. Now, as for the RFK and the MLK stuff, I mean, this is what, like, look, a lot of the truth of those stories really do I think, undermine. I won't even just say the case for American exceptionalism, but they really do threaten America's place as a legitimate hegemon, which Trump ultimately does not want to threaten. I mean, this is ultimately what it is all about. It's all about
I think that ship has sailed.
What has sailed.
Trump has managed in a couple of months to rekindle the ancient DNA of European pride.
Oh, well, in their minds, certainly, but not in the minds of the American people, and more specifically, his supporters. They still see America, as I would say, really the top cop on the beat, and they might not like to fancy themselves interventionists and neocons. Michael Tracy had a great point. He wrote that article. We should just retire the word neocon. It really doesn't mean much anymore, right? Because these people will have all this smoke for neocons, yet they will back Israel to the hilt, just as any neocon would. So what the hell are you even talking about, right?
Right.
Ultimately, I think, MAGA sees America as the top dog. And you find out that the government killed JFK, that the government killed Robert F. Kennedy, that the government killed Martin Luther King. That is a tough pill for the collective to have to swallow, and I don't know if they're going to be eager to put that out there. My guess is they will not. So far, they released something on Martin Luther King, some weird sex thing. That was the big thing that came out like early in the administration. Yeah, like we all knew Martin Luther King fucked. Everybody knew that. What we're really curious about is who killed him. Like that's really the more important thing.
Well, that's very typical of the game they play with their followers, and it's just a different flavor of what the Democrats do. Throw them a few crumbs and pretend they gave them a loaf,
right?
And rely on desperate people to pretend that they got a loaf.
Please clap.